Welcome to Property Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Zalkin. Today I'm here with Kieran Singh from Nexus. Kieran is the founder. Kieran, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. Great to be here.
Kieran, for those that are new to 3D buildings, please explain what Nexus does and your story as well.
Yeah, so Nexus, at a high level, what we're doing, and then I can jump into kind of the background and path to get here. But really, we're taking a novel approach to residential construction, which kind of combines rapid on-site structural construction using large-scale concrete 3D printing. And we combine that with what we call dynamic manufacturing. So you can think of it as almost like an automotive assembly plant, but for building materials that are done offsite. And our approach is designed long term, ultimately to bring the bespoke design, the quality and the craftsmanship of luxury homes to the masses in a affordable and sustainable way, along with some clever and kind of innovative ways to integrate technology into the home that enhance its user or occupational experience. Now, this will take some time. It's definitely going to be a decade plus long march. But I think if we do this right, we'll be ushering in a new era for the average American home. And in our eyes, it's the most critical and meaningful product in our society, and one that if we can address and make a small dent, and even we could solve some major issues on several fronts. But yeah.
Kieran, what inspired you to create Nexus? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so it's funny how sometimes in life things come full circle in ways that we never could have expected. And Nexus is kind of something that came full circle all the way from back in my childhood. So I grew up in a small town called Gerald, Texas, right around the corner from where your exciting developments are happening. And growing up as kids, my brothers and I worked for my family's general contracting business, primarily residential construction, a little bit of commercial. And the work definitely sucks because as a kid you get all the grunt work, but it uncovered a passion of mine for building, architecture, kind of design, and it just was always deeply fascinating to me to see a raw piece of earth, and then bit by bit, a home or a structure kind of arises and comes to be. And so it's been a long held passion, but people ask me, like, why did you decide to leave a great job to go all in on this little startup? And it was never really a choice, because I truly believe down to my bones that in front of us is a generational opportunity to change the landscape of an industry that produces a product. And when I say product, I mean the American home. That is so critical and meaningful for our environment, for our societal stability, for our economic stability. And, right now we find ourselves in a historic moment where housing has never been more unaffordable. There's tens of millions of Americans that are simply priced out of the market who in previous decades and generations would have been able to buy a home. And I have a kind of deep disdain for value and price like discrepancy. And it's like it's a stagnant product. It hasn't changed in a couple decades. Maybe a smart thermostat and some nicer appliances, but you pay so much more for it. So much to the point where there's a financial gorilla on this generation's back and every generation to follow if we don't do anything about it. And so it just seemed like something that was peak problem. No one's doing anything about it, so we have to do something about it. But we want to bring to market not something that's marginally better, but dramatically better, because I think technology has afforded us that opportunity. But yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw a 3D printed structure, and what made you decide that the future was 3D printed structures? Because there's so many different ways to sort of tackle the housing problem. What was it? Were there certain benefits that you see in 3D housings that can't be replicated elsewhere? I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, so I think really it's like additive manufacturing, I think, with various different materials. So what you'll see if you just Google, 3D printed buildings, you'll see primarily kind of I think, kind of crappy work with various different companies using different structures and approaches to 3D print concrete on site for primarily the walls. But there's also a couple other companies using non-concrete materials off-site to do kind of more of manufacturing prefab approach.
Mhm.
In our eyes, it's really not one or the other, like prefab, modular, off-site, or on-site. It's really a combination of both because they both have interesting value propositions. But the first time I saw a 3D printed building was Icon in 2018. I bought a desktop 3D printer. I just thought it was so cool to have a little robot that can make you things in your house. And through that rabbit hole, saw Icon's first building in downtown Austin, and just kind of dove in and just out of pure curiosity started studying, researching, and uncovering all across the world, not just here, the different approaches people were taking to create structures in ways that they hadn't before. And I think on-site concrete 3D printing, though there are some major challenges, and we're doing some unique things to make it more scalable, more autonomous in ways that you're not seeing right now. But the value prop is that you have kind of unlimited design freedom without incremental cost. You kind of consolidate multiple different materials with a single or a couple different materials that are more sustainable inherently. They have the potential to have increased longevity of the structure, make it a more performant structure, lower the maintenance over time. And so there's some things to solve on the way there. But for on-site concrete 3D printing, yeah, it's really freedom of design with less constraints and ideally better financial margins as well.
Speaking of, some things to solve, what are the biggest challenges?
Definitely, it is not. People think the robotics and things are the hardest part, but it's really the material science. And so, what you're not seeing out in the field today, or what you are seeing out in the field today, is basically kind of slightly modified concrete and a bunch of folks sticking their finger in the wind and sticking their finger in the material and manually adjusting it. Because if you start a print at the beginning of the day, when say it's 80 degrees, and then 5 hours later it's 100 degrees, your material properties are changing. And so if you want to actually print continuously with the same consistent quality, you need to be able to control the variables of your material. And so it's really the material science, which is the hardest part. Robotics is kind of built around the material. And I also think construction systems, or what we call construction systems, is how do you integrate all of these other pieces around your new wall system or the new elements that you're doing? Because if it's not thought through very well, we're taking some unique approaches to that. It's a critical element of our strategy and approach. But there's a lot of things that come together to build a home. So how can you make sure that something that wasn't thought through isn't holding up the rest of your project because nobody has installed windows or plumbing or electrical or with your new system? And so construction systems and integrations is also a challenge, but less challenging than the material science.
So not only are you at the forefront of building a whole new way of building, but you're also building a company. What's it
Yes,
been
sir.
like? What's your journey been like, sort of at the helm, being the CEO, the founder, and building a company from scratch? Because that in and of itself is an impressive feat.
It's been a hell of a journey, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It's actually been a year ago this month that I went full time, dedicated 100% of the time, and focused on Nexus. And it's I've never been a CEO before. I had never even been a senior leader or manager in a company before, and so a lot of it is, I think, learning how to do the job, learning how to be a leader, and it takes a lot of painful mistakes, I think, to learn the lessons needed. But for the past year, that's what this has been for me, is learning the job, really. But I couldn't have designed the road to Nexus better in hindsight if I tried. So luckily, I think I came in with a strong set of experience. But it's really the leadership, which has been the most challenging and largest growth area for me personally.
In a field where the science and innovation is changing so quickly, what are you seeing as like some of the major trends that can't be ignored? Because there's other companies that do 3D printed, homes and structures. What are some of the advancements that you're seeing right now that are kind of at the forefront and cutting edge and larger trends, just sort of industry wide?
Yeah. So, and for us, I don't like to throw us in the 3D printing bucket. It's really the construction technology bucket because we do leverage other kind of autonomous technologies in addition to additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So we kind of have a multi-material, multi-robotic approach. But industry wide, I think it's still super early. So it's been fascinating to see it slowly get a little more traction, and companies start popping up that are now taking different approaches. And I think it'll take a few more years where we actually see more promising approaches, but nobody has really figured it out. There's only a handful of companies that are doing innovative things and frankly impress me. And I think we'll see a lot more as it progresses and kind of matures. But I mean, I saw a statistic a few months back that something like less than 300 buildings globally were made with next generation construction technology. And so, I mean, that
Wow.
you're familiar with the development world. That's a fraction of what even goes on here in our locale. So it's early days, and um, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things ahead of us.
What do 3D printed structures look like, 10 years from now? I know it's so impossible, but that trajectory about, so many years, obviously, we've all seen some of the icon buildings where the walls are curved, but what is the architectural um, look and feel of a 3D printed home? Is it going to be undistinguishable from a traditional home in the future, or are you going to be able to tell that it's a 3D printed home?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have brought on some incredible partners that are informing us with design and architecture and things like that. Because I think, like any other time in history, when you have a new building methodology, a new building material, it informs the architectural style. The promise and the excitement with this kind of technology, where you have a lot of design freedom, is that you can not only kind of mimic different styles that traditionally have been done, but also create new design conventions entirely. You could think of like red brick in Europe. It's like it informs a whole era of architectural design. And I think new construction technologies will inform new ways of designing buildings and structures as well. For us, we never wanted to be boxed in to a single aesthetic, right? So for our approach, it's like, how can we produce any kind of aesthetic and still use our same technology suite? Because we don't want one of our partners or customers to be, boxed in to where what we can do and produce for them, which is unlike kind of what you're seeing today. I think that the technology enables a broader suite of kind of tools in your design toolkit. But yeah.
Sure. And we haven't talked about numbers or cost for a 3D printed structure. And at scale, certainly there's economies of scale.
Sure.
Right now, how much more work or how much more time before you think we'll see a traditional home cost the same as a 3D printed home? Are we talking months, years? Just play that out for us. When will we see it, at par or even below traditional construction?
Yeah, two thoughts on that. One is, it's kind of interesting how a lot of the leaders of the companies have kind of coalesced on 30% cheaper, lower in terms of all-in costs.
Yeah.
I independently came to that as well in the very beginning, financially, like modeling out the technology and what does this translate into in terms of at the end of the day your financial outcomes. And I also came to 25 to 35%. So that is interesting. I don't think most players in the space are actually achieving that, and you see it for instance, with Icon out in Georgetown, where things have taken a lot longer than I think they expected. And I don't see the cost advantages largely in the market, except for really one company, which is very impressive, called Diamond Age, which they do use concrete 3D printing. But again, it's not the end all be all. They have a larger automation suite to automate other elements on the home. And unlike Icon in Georgetown over here, which I believe they're 4 to 500,000 plus, they're producing for 21st Century out in Arizona, and they're actually slightly cheaper than what 21st Century was doing prior. And so there's only a couple companies who have been able to have the financial advantages realized. But yeah, I think everybody else has a lot of things to figure out. For us, we're pretty confident in our first project and meeting our financial goals.
Tell us a little bit about your first project or first few projects. Speaking of projects, just quickly, the specs,
Sure.
the location. Are you building it to prove out a concept or test certain theories? Love to hear about it.
Yeah, so we can I can't dive into as many details as we have offline, because our developer partners haven't come out publicly,
Sure.
and we are much earlier stage than some older, very well funded competitors, and we don't really want to give any ideas to some folks with more resources than us. But I will say, whenever we do come out, it's going to make everyone look very behind, because they are behind. But for the first project, it's our, what we call our proof of concept building, where we're going to iron out and verify our financial model and things like that, and understand how can we improve upon our operational efficiencies, our financial efficiencies and things, to then apply a more optimized approach to the following project, which is outside of Austin. It's a 25 home community for one of our partners, and we have a couple others in the pipe which are quite exciting. But yeah, in 2024, we'll be coming out with those, and I think it'll put everybody on notice.
Do you see Nexus going beyond single family homes? Do you sort of anticipate to grow it into commercial structures, multifamily structures? I know there's limitless opportunities and possibilities, but where do you sort of see Nexus, going towards? Which segment of the market?
Yeah, so the I think focus. Speaking of business building, focus is very important, and what focus really means is saying no to a lot of other things to go all in on a few things. And the single family net new, like residential construction market, even here just in Texas, is large enough for us to go all in on. And so we don't want to get too distracted with any other tangentially related things, even if we could. That being said, we are producing what I call our secondary products to kind of pay our bills month to month. So that's furniture, landscape architecture, things like that, just to keep our assets productive and making use of them while we're iterating on the technology. But following these first projects, we're really going to spend several years in the luxury home market, and you could think of it as like a Tesla Roadster like strategy. Again, we don't want to come out with marginally better products. There's a lot of things that you need to figure out before you can actually deliver the vision of more sustainable, more affordable, and higher quality products to the masses. And so, you don't start with the Model 3, you start with the Roadster, high margin, low volume, and you iterate and develop, and then you incrementally expand. And that's what we're going to be doing as well. And so it'll be luxury market for a few years, and incrementally expanding out to broader markets and lower price points.
Are there any common misconceptions about 3D printed structures? For example, when you talk to an average person that has not seen or heard of a 3D printed home, do they have some idea of what it is? And if so, is it different than what it actually is? Like,
I haven't, yeah.
are you having to educate people about it, or do enough people know what a 3D printed home is?
No, I think definitely It's a lot of education,
Yeah.
even with VCs and things like that. A ton of education, because again, it's very early, it's very new. I mean, you could talk about any kind of construction technology approach. It's radically different, and so it's foreign to a lot of people. Construction's foreign to a lot of people, but no, I think that's why for us, we don't want anyone to care about how the home is produced. We just want the customers to know that they have a great product. It's like you don't care about how your car is manufactured; you just want a great car. So that's why for us, it's really leading with the product, and that's kind of how we started as well, building out what is the ideal product outcome that we want to create, the experience. Now let's work backwards to the technology, not try to create the technology and figure out what we can make with it. And so I think people often think of cheap. They because a lot of these companies have started with affordable housing as the thing they want to tackle, and the output isn't, in my eyes, aesthetically pleasing the vast majority of the times. And so oftentimes people think of, and they think of 3D printing, they kind of equate it to desktop 3D printing, little plastic
Huh.
things, and gross it up. And so it's kind of like, oh, maybe it's like a cheaper, version of a home. And yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't actually thought about that one, but usually a
How,
lot of education.
how important is sustainability in your business model or even in the eyes of the end, resident of the home?
Yeah, it's critical for us. It's also what informed uh, everything that we're doing today. I think if there's a paradigm shifting technology taking place, and again, we want to really revolutionize the entire industry, you have to make everything better. So you can't just be aesthetically better. You can't just be financially better. It can't just be a better structure. It also needs to be more performant than previous structures. And I believe that this technology generally and our unique flavor of it and approach is one of the best bets on scalably achieving passive homes and homes that are at the community scale able to um, run themselves for their entire life cycle with entirely on-site like produced renewable energy. And so the energy efficiency of the home, the durability, the longevity, the sustainability of the materials actually going into it, is critically important to us. And yeah, happy to elaborate on that if you'd like. I feel like sustainability is a word that people don't actually have a good framework for
Right.
understanding. But yeah, yeah,
It's thrown around a lot. In terms of analyzing research and data, um, are you mostly still focused right now on the material science, or are there other aspects of research and data that you find yourself really working to achieve or striving to hit certain benchmarks?
yeah. It's I get excited talking about these things, and again, I don't want to release too much, but no, it's data's huge. Data's huge. Just like it is with everything we see with generative AI and large language models in the news, it's the efficacy of the models are largely dependent on the data that you train them on. Um, and in our space, there's no open source data to train your model on. It's not collected or it's not in existence until you collect it. And so data collection for machine optimization for really making sure that our systems can actually work in the field autonomously without human input, data has been a critical element of that. And so that's been very important for us in the beginning for material science testing, but also for print operations. And so data has been huge. We are and have developed our own in-house concrete mixes, as well as some of our offsite like manufacturing elements as well. Everything we've done has been 100% designed, built in-house, and so material science is critical on every facet, but data is critical as well for really developing those compounding advantages and differentiators. Yeah.
That's incredible. Are there other benefits to building a 3D printed structure? For example, we talked a little bit about cost and scale. How about time? Are you seeing a great reduction in the amount of time to build a 3D printed home versus a traditional home? 6 months, how quickly can you at at peak will you be able to build a 3D printed home?
So and I don't want to generalize this for everyone because I think you're seeing um, things actually take slightly longer with other players in the space. And again, I think it's because, frankly, I think they don't view it as a holistic system like the home itself. And so, you know, the production rate is always limited by the one thing that holds you up. And so if you haven't thought it through
It's
and
the
made sure
bottleneck.
that everything, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so for our approach within the next 2 years, we believe will be about four times faster. So for traditional construction compared to our methodologies, we'll have about 4 to 5x greater output within the next 2 years, and we'll keep marching to find what the limit actually is. But I think it could be much higher.
Are you thinking 30 days to build a home, or are you think somewhere in that range?
Yeah, so for the next 2 years, it will probably be less than 90, but 90 will really be the goal and the objective, to put it reasonably. Because as we build out our automation suite, we vertically integrate more on the home, and we kind of consolidate more trades, more subcontractors and things like that, building materials into what we're doing in house. And so we'll incrementally improve that operational efficiency as we consolidate more under the Nexus umbrella, which is a critical element of our tech stack, is the incremental vertical integration
Sure.
of the home, so we can actually control the product that we're creating.
In terms of 5 years, 10 years, what does Nexus look like um, several years out? What is your ultimate goal and vision for the company if we're looking out that far in the future?
Yeah. So to paint a picture for you, and again, we're not trying to do everything today. It's a complex problem to solve. But a decade from now, our objective is that no other company, I don't care how much money and time and resources you have, a decade from now, no other company will be able to build a higher quality home faster and at a lower cost than Nexus can. And our vision is, I don't know if you've seen the generative AI like pictures and things of like architecture and buildings and things.
Sure.
Yeah, they look crazy and they look awesome, but it's like, how do you actually build that? And it's like, okay, so you could have an awesome design, but how you manifest that into reality is important. So for us, a decade from now, we don't want folks who are in the market to be scouring like cookie cutter designs and trying to force their lifestyle into what's just available. What we think would be really awesome is you come to our site and you click through an intuitive questionnaire about what's important to you. What kind of lifestyle do you have? Do you have kids? Do you not? Do you work from home? What activities do you do? And taking all of those variables into account, we produce a bespoke version of home for you that is tailored for your lifestyle. And on the back end, we have all of the capabilities to bring that to life. And we can deliver that luxury home experience to the masses, which is really, if you're building a $10 million home, one of our partners said this incredible thing, which is every time he sits down with a client, he comes in with an empty cup and relearns what home is. And it's like, wow, well, why can't we deliver that to the masses? And we're not going to do that tomorrow, but technology has enabled the masses to have what used to solely uh, belong to the rich. And I think it's about time we deliver that or a similar experience to that to the masses. And so, yeah, it's really delivering a bespoke version of home to the average everyday American, and doing it in a way that decreases their total cost of ownership. And, it's something that 10 years into the home, they're like, wow, there's so much that I didn't have to think about, that I didn't have to do. And it's really enhanced my everyday life. And so, yeah, 10 years from now, that's what we hope to be at scale.
What, kind of separately speaking, what books or research or other podcasts even, where do you draw inspiration, or what other influences kind of go into you've got an active mind. I'm sure you're always thinking about Nexus. Um, what else do you like to kind of draw upon in terms of inspiration or books or knowledge or learning?
Yeah. Again, to the building a business thing. Um, to be 100% dedicated and focused, it will eliminate a lot of things from your life. And I read a lot less books than I used to, and I really just consume and devour information on everything from like material science R&D to building methodologies and things. I have a variety of different Google alerts, a variety of different newsletters and like emails I subscribe to, and the internet's great for increasing knowledge, and it's just been incredible for understanding what's going on out in the landscape, and also just keeping a tab on the latest and greatest developments. But we'll say one of the funnest parts of the job for me has been the development and cultivation of relationships with folks who are at the top of their game in individual areas, like architecture, like development, like construction. And we have some great contacts at UT in the engineering department. So just full gamut and understanding their experience and what they have seen as problems that should be addressed, because they've thought about it a lot longer than we have, actually, most of the time, but they just haven't had the means to do something about it. And so learning from people who have been in the game longer and that are just excellent at their craft has been one of the biggest areas of learnings for us. And that's been also personally rewarding.
That's great. Any final thoughts? Anything else you'd like to share about Nexus or your journey?
Um, I'm really excited. I really can't understate how multifaceted and significant like the problem is. I think we find ourselves in a very historic moment, like, collectively as Americans, and um, there doesn't look like there's a solution in sight that's actually going to address the problems. But slowly, it's coming to the kind of public consciousness that we could and should do something about housing and these issues. And I'm really excited for the next decade. I think that the next decade, if we don't destroy ourselves in the process, will truly be a coming of age for our species. And I think that it could be a world in which technology has enabled abundance, but juxtaposed against insecurity, instability, on both a societal and environmental standpoint, if we don't fix this cornerstone of the American dream. And so I'm fired up to be on the playing field and to make that happen and to solve those issues. But no, I appreciate the time, Robert, and great questions, and thanks for having me on. Any last questions on your side?
Kieran, I think you did awesome. Thank you so much for your time on Property Potential Podcast. Look forward to continuing our conversation offline as well. Thank you so much, Kieran.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert.